Hey everybody, it's Beau Beery with Coldwell Banker Commercial. I want to go over the May market survey results. We had another great turnout, 150 respondents, which covers the majority of all of the assets in the Central and North Florida market. And I just think it's a really helpful report for all of you. It certainly is for me to help you plan for the future, to see what others just like you are thinking. And so, where you can find this on the website is if you go to resources, popular reports. It's right here at the top, the May survey. Here's April and a whole bunch of other reports. When you click on this PDF will come up. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who it was sent to. So these, I cover 6 markets. These are all the owners it was sent to who own all of the assets in these markets. Those respondents are from 37 different states, half of which are in Florida. And you can see the distribution here elsewhere. While the rest of the report is in PDF format, for this median, because the way I'm doing this video, I'm actually going to use Excel because the answers are on the left side, my video is on the right. So I'm going to go through Excel on the video. Please note here at the top, questions 1 through 6 here, the questions I did in May for the first 6 are the same ones I did in April. So it's really cool to be able to see them side by side. And as we get into questions 7 through 13, you can see there's no comparison because those were new questions for the May survey. All right, so let's jump right into it. What type of assets are in your portfolio? Pretty much the same distribution. And this distribution here represents the actual distribution of assets in the marketplace. It's very, very close, 78% conventional, so on and so forth. Okay, here was one of the first big questions. So comparing May rent collections to January through March, how'd you do? So I'm going to go over some of my notes. I took some notes here because I want to hit some high level stuff. So what I have written here is in May, nearly 52% of investors, so that would be right here, collected the same amount of rent or better than pre-COVID months. And in April, it was only 30%. So if you take these 3, that's a huge improvement. And by the way, when you select stuff, you can actually see the summation down here in the right-hand corner. So you can compare them very, very easily. Also, another observation I have is those investors who were down more than 10% in rent collections went from 32% of investors in April, so that's right here, to only 9% in May. So I thought that was really, really cool. And the same distribution for those who were down 5 to 10%, which was the biggest chunk, stayed about the same. So of those who were down, most were down only 5 to 10%, which is not really put anybody in any kind of distress. To me, I think these are the distressed ones, and we just went down from 11 to 2 or whatever that is. Yeah, I think it's like 11% to 2%. That's a pretty big improvement. All right, next question. Are you a willing and able buyer for the right property and terms? That improved slightly from 79 to 87%. That's a pretty good chunk. I mean, that's a good indication that people are doing better. They have more money, they have more equity, they have more confidence in buying. Let's see here. Yes, that's what I had. So for number 4, number of months at April and May's performance before you would need to sell. And what I have in my notes is the number of investors who may need to sell in the next 1 to 6 months stayed about the same. So you can see here, that's about 13.5%, and it went down to 11.5%. So that's pretty darn close. And then it looks like here, the number of investors who don't need to sell at all went up slightly. So, obviously, I guess that means they felt like things are going better, so they definitely don't need to sell. It only went from 78 to 81, not a big jump. And you can see the distribution here among the others. Everything pretty much stayed the same. All right, number 5, when will multifamily values return, or sale prices, if you will, return to pre-COVID levels? Very interesting. So for my number 5, my note was investors in May are less optimistic that values will return to pre-COVID levels between now and the first half of 2022. So what I meant was, if you compare April and you add up all of this all the way up until the first half of 2022, that comes to 73%. If I do the same for May, it went to 70%. So it actually went down a little bit. And then if you look at these first two, so basically in April, those who thought we might recover by the first half of 2021, that went from 38% to only 31%. And that was the biggest differential when you look at periods. So essentially, having experienced April and May now, investors are saying, hey, I know things are doing better. I collected more in May. Things are looking better. But I still think, just from everything that you see and are reading, it's going to take a little bit longer to get back to sale prices pre-COVID. Okay, so number 6, what do my notes say here? Investors are exceedingly more optimistic about the following month of rent, which would be June. And I have here 70% of investors believe June rent collections will be the same or better than May versus what folks said in April. So if you look at this, in April, when I asked, how do you think May will be? Only 33% thought May would be the same or better than January through March, if you will. Now, in May, we have 70% of respondents who felt like June will be better than May. That's a huge difference. All right, here's 2 more that were pretty, these are probably self-explanatory. 57% of investors applied for PPP loan. I guess that makes sense. And then you got 9.5% of investors applied for forbearance. Now, you may look at this, okay, and you may say, well, Beau, 91% of people didn't, so the market's doing well. I agree with that, but if 9.4% of investors eventually get into trouble, now not all that 9.4 will, okay, but let's just say half of those do get into trouble and have to sell. 5% is still a pretty good sized number. When you think about how many hundreds of complexes may be in any one market, it's a big number, right? So that could easily be a dozen or more in, like, say, Jacksonville for over 100 unit conventional apartment complexes. All right, number 9. This is what percent below, this is a good one. What percent below pre-COVID market values would you offer on a property that was unaffected by COVID? So in other words, if in April and May a property did perfectly fine, collected the same amount of rents, no problems, it's basically COVID free, if you will, what's the discount you expect on the price? And so you can see the distribution here. It's pretty evenly distributed, except for, by far, the biggest distribution. A third of folks thought a 6 to 10% discount would be necessary. Some of my other stuff here. So I got only 11% of investors would pay the same price. Let's see what else we got here. And then you got, if you add all of this up, you got 37% of investors think there should be at least an 11% or higher discount on the price. So very interesting. But I think this is a pretty decent one. And obviously every property is different and every market is different. But I'm hearing this a lot in phone calls. So, all right, number 10. I asked everyone to list the occupations of the tenants who they feel like have been asking for reduced rent or just not paying in April and May. And I got over 100 responses, but when you take that 100 and you bring it on down, like these right here were repeated over and over and over again. I'm not going to read through them. You can look at them. Okay, number 11. What will universities decide regarding returning to the fall? As you can see here, the vast majority, 57% of respondents, felt like it would be some in-class courses and some online. And then you got another 30% that think that basically, let's call it in my markets, UF and FSU will be fully open. You're fully in class, and that, a lot of these classes offer anyway live streaming and recorded options as well. So that's 30%. Let's see here, and only 10% felt like there would be no in class at all. Now, as you know, I've attached an article that just came out in today's paper that universities are meeting in the next few days to discuss this. Most of them will not have final results for their specific school until after July 1. So we'll see how that goes. Number 12, what percent of students will seek housing if all universities return to in-class courses? So in other words, if the best case scenario happens, which is this right here, so we're fully in class, universities are open, yay, 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 how many students will still actually show up? Because if you think about it, a lot of this is controlled by parents. How many parents and how many students will say to themselves, yeah, I'm okay to be in a classroom with 150 kids in it who are from, China and Italy and New York and California and some of the hardest hit places. And so you can see the distribution here. The biggest group said 86 to 90%. And so you've got another, what is this? If you add this up, this is 13, 20. Yeah, so that's 41%. Is that right? 28, 30. Yeah, 41% felt like it would be less than 85% showing up. But let's just look at the 86 to 90%. Let's say 90% of students do come back. So you got 10% of UF. Now there are 45,000 full-time students at UF, and roughly, I think it's somewhere between 35 and 40,000 students at FSU. So at UF, that's 4,000 beds, okay, that could have a shortage if only 90% of the students come in. Not even talking about, you got a fair number of folks here. I mean, geez, look at this. You got 28% saying they don't think there'll be more than 80%. So that would be pretty colossal. And then I said student housing investors only answer this question. I really should just open up to everyone. I don't know why I put that. But basically, I wanted folks to compare April and May pre-leasing for 2020 versus 2019. So right now in the month of May, in the months of April and May, how does April and May pre-leasing compare to 2019? And you can see here, definitely the biggest distribution was were that folks were down or behind 11 to 20% on their pre-leasing. But there's still some, you still got another, if you add up these three, you got 32% of respondents who were down 21% or more. And that's probably not going to get any better until the announcement in July. And then it'll either be a floodgate open or who knows. So, all right, I think that's covered it all. I always hate if I'm going to miss something or not. Now, on the, let me tell you this, on the PDF version, and I announced this in my email, but you got here all the questions in the PDF. At the very bottom, so on page 5, I created the skinny. So for those of you who, who may not have made it through this full video, I guess if you wouldn't even heard this by now, but this is just kind of some high level observations that I have. If you don't want to read through the entire report or analyze it, this has some extra points on it that may be beneficial to you. Okay, I'll stop talking. Thanks so much for being a part of this. I don't know if I'll do this in June again. I'm just not sure if it's necessary. If it is, I'll certainly put out another survey. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with surveys. There's a lot of folks sending them out there, but if as the weeks go on, I feel like it's necessary, I'll certainly do so, and I hope that you'll participate. All right, guys, talk to you later. Bye.